We need about 400 of about 20 tons. We are unable to get the raw materials. So what we do is we have to aggregate. So we have the volumes that we can produce for maybe a week or two.
Okay.
And then we set up the machines, we produce, and then when it's finished, we start the cycle all over again.
Explain the process to us. What do you do exactly with the soya bean?
Okay, so what we do with the soya is that we take the soybean, which the farmers produce mostly in the north, and then we treat it. We clean the stones, the husk, and all that, and then we condition it because you need to agitate the cells of the soybean,
Right.
so that you'll be able to take the oil, and we do that through heat treatment. So after the heat treatment, then it goes to the crushing where we crush it by pressing it, and then it separates the oil, which is the crude soy oil. That's the first stage of the soya oil that we consume in our household as vegetable oil. That is where it starts.
Okay.
And then the rest it comes in as what we call soybean meal. Okay. In both products are essential, so there's nothing like waste, because you get about 18 to 20% here, you get about 78 to 80% here. So both products are of value to our production. So after crushing and doing the separation, then the oil will go through the sedimentation process, and then if it needs to be refined, it is refined. The
Also
cake-
here in Ghana?
Yes.
Okay.
And the cake will also go through some tempering by cooling it and grinding, and then we bag them, and then we ship it to, we supply it to the feed millers, who also then take it up and then process them into what we call the mashes, feed mashes, layer
Right.
mash, broiler mash, and others, and then they will sell it or then supply it to the poultry farmers to use for their production. So the soya bean is the main protein component of the feed, the main protein component of the feed. And without soya bean, it will be difficult to run any effective poultry industry in the country.
Right. Let me speak to Mr. Nyamiche and check the situation also in Kumasi. Mr. Kwesi Nyamiche, if you can hear me, a very good morning to you. Thank you for your time. Okay. All right. We don't have him yet, but of course we do have Mr. Kwame Gakpe, who is a member of Parliament, Parliamentary Select Committee member on agriculture. Mr. Gakpe, you know, you've listened to what we've played. You've listened to the processor that we have in the studio. I'm sure you've heard about their complaints, but there's a regulation. That's the thing. What are we not doing? What are we ready to do? How is Parliament pushing so that we can get these issues resolved?
Thank you very much. First of all, greetings to all your listeners and viewers. I will say, though there is a regulating LI regulating the greens, but recently the Ministry of Food and Agriculture have actually inaugurated grains board authority, where they will regulate how cocoa is being regulated. Cocoa board does its work. The same framework is established for the grain. It is in good direction. But for me, looking at it, the LI is outdated, and as a parliament, we need to work on it.
This
Why
is
am I
a
saying
2020
that?
LIO.
Then?
I'm just reminding you that this is 2020. You say it's outdated?
Yes, because for me, that is what my point I'm making, because the government flagship program is planting for food and agriculture. And the thematic area for that is to make subsidize fertilizer, subsidize agri input and all that. And the flagship program is for food and agriculture is to create jobs. And then when you create jobs, planting for food and agriculture, we're supposed to produce a lot. And then to enable Ghana to export those grains for foreign exchange, which will bring a lot of earnings to the country. So if this is the flagship program, why are we putting impediments in place for export of those grains? Because we are not promoting it. So for me, if planting for food agriculture is working well, there's no way that LI should be in force, because we need foreign exchange for this country, for the country to develop. Because we are importing some grains from elsewhere. Are they not into agriculture? They are also producing. So to me, I can tell you on authority that planting for food and agriculture is a failure. We have failed this country because a lot of resources have been pumped into planting for food and agriculture. But the end product, what we should derive from it, we are not getting it. Here we are today. Poultry farmers are suffering. 70% of the component of poultry feed is maize. 10% of component is soya and all that. And then companies are in Ghana processing soya for soya oil, soya cake, soya meat, soya drinks, and soya processing. So they are adding value to the raw material. But here we are, the companies are not able to get the raw materials to produce for export as well as to feed our people. And it's the same soya we are using for feeding our poultry. Our poultry farm is now on the verge of collapse. Some are out of business because the price. Another area that is affecting poultry is wheat bran. You know, when we import wheat and we process them to flour and all that, the byproduct, poultry farm use it. But now, in 2020, it was costing 20 cedis per bag. But as we speak to you, it's 80 cedis per bag. Maize was costing 150 per bag. But as I speak to you, it's almost about 500 to 400 per bag. Even in the early days of this year, it was 700 Ghana cedis. And as I speak to you, Ghana, we don't have any good food security policy because the buffer stock have no money. They are not able to store any food. If something happens to Ghana in terms of emergency, we will suffer because the buffer stock is just in the name. But what they're supposed to do, they are not doing it because they don't have money to stock food. That is why if they were to have money, bumper harvest, they mop all those soya beans into warehouse. By this time, soya beans is nowhere to be found. You should be releasing them into the market to stabilize the market. But it's not happening. So our policies are fancy, sloganeering, but they are not making the necessary impact. That is all. I heard the minister talking about we have to get a permit before people who are importing from the countries or the grains. You have authorized the customs to do that. Is that where we are? Then what is the planning for food and agriculture doing? This is no. Last year, the ministry grant to buy yellow corn is part of the poultry farm feeding. We have to import 600 metric tons of yellow corn into the country. Because we say planting for food and agriculture is working. When you ask them, they say it is working. As we speak now, we have a lot of water bodies and irrigation farm supposed to work. The Palugu multipurpose dam supposed to provide water for irrigation farming. As I speak to you, that project stopped. There is no money to continue financing that project for agri purposes. So it is so sad that projects that we're supposed to do and then to enhance agriculture in the country, they are not yielding the necessary impact. So for me, planting for food and agriculture is a failure, and then the policy is not working. And we need to revisit that policy to the betterment of the Ghanaians, because our companies and factories are suffering, and then the needed value chain, adding value. Companies are ready to add value, but the raw material is nowhere to be found.
Right. And Mr. Gakwe, I'll come to you on the specific issue of the kind of pressure that as a select committee and as members of parliament, you're also willing, to bring on bear. But just hang in there for me. Let me come to you, Mr. Abuaje. We understand that some factories have shut down.
Yes.
You have cut down.
Yes.
Paint the picture. What's the situation like?
The situation is bad. Very, very bad. And you see, in our industry, to be able to set up even a 1 metric ton an hour plant, it costs about $1 million. Our members in total can process 200,000 metric tons a year. The total soya bean meal we need in this country for aquaculture, poultry farming, it's around 400, maybe maximum 500,000.
Right.
So if we have an installed capacity of about 200,000. And we are producing about 170,000 in the country. Let's say by the time you treat it to food grade, it's about 150,000. Already in 2018 and so, we are exporting almost half of that. And this year, I know if the data come up or data comes out, it will be worse. What we are doing now is that we are importing almost averagely 350,000 metric tons of the finished products into the country.
That we could have processed and finished
exactly,
it here.
And that does not really create much job. When you take, for instance, my place, we have electricians, we have welders, we have mechanical engineers, we have electrical engineers, we have accountants, we have purchasing officers, and all that. Now, with this situation, we will have to let most of these guys go home. And you ask yourself, and a trained artisan, and our work is a bit specialized, so the person knows how to work on your machines. He won't be able to go out and be doing something else. So if you ask him to go home, virtually, he cannot fit anywhere.
I think it was one of the processors that Prince Appiah spoke to in the documentary that you were sharing with me, that he was, his company was listed on the Ghana Stock Exchange.
Yes, the Golden Web. Golden Web was listed on the commodity exchange. He was on the commodity exchange, and today his factory is lying fallow. He's doing just about 10 metric tons a day, and that is even based on if he gets the raw materials to process. And you know, entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs. No matter how difficult it is, anytime I believe Mr. Bello will go into his factory, he has that eagerness to bring back that whole life into his business. And so he will continue to do something, even if he's not making profit out of it.
All right.
Then you ask yourself, if we are producing 170,000 metric tons of soybean in the country, which we have installed capacity in terms of machinery to process everything, and yet that will not even be able to feed the poultry industry. Why are we killing all that investment and giving people permit to export the finished product, to import the finished product, which we virtually make nothing out of? It's and the sad aspect is that planting for food and jobs has helped to increase the volumes of soya production in the country. And then immediately it becomes successful for the local processors to process so that we create value addition and create more jobs in the value chain. Foreigners comes in, especially Indians, they take over the whole sector. They cut off all the aggregators who go around picking the products for us, bring in their own Indians. I could show you pictures of Indians going to farm gate to mobilize 1 bag, 2 bags, 3 bags, and they've created shops all over the north where they aggregate this thing and then quickly send it to the port to export. We've taken all the Ghanaians out of this system. Now investment that went into plant and machinery is sitting there. And you know, there is always this call that we should do value addition. Value addition is investment. It's plant and machinery. Even the banks are not willing to support plant and machinery. So if any entrepreneur or a businessman decides that he is going to put his money into plants and machinery and then set up a business thinking that he is supporting a cause for a common good for the country, then at the end of the day, foreigners are allowed to benefit from the planting for food and jobs, which is supported by our own tax. Our own tax. Foreigners comes and takes it. And then the Ghanaian entrepreneur, the Ghanaian industrialist, they benefit nothing and rather piling up debt. It's a bit painful. Sadly.
It is. Not a bit. It is very painful. Mr. Gakpa, just finally with you, because we're looking for solutions here. What is your committee willing to do? What are you willing to do as a member of parliament who is on top of this issue?
These issues have come to the attention committee
Mr. Gakpe, can you please reposition yourself? The line is not very clear right now. We're losing you. Hello, Mr. Gakpe. Hello, sir. Okay, I'm afraid we've lost the Member of Parliament for Keta, who is also on the Parliamentary Select Committee on Agriculture. I would get him, raise him again so that we explore the solution. But just finally with you, Mr. Gideon Abuaje, what should be the solution?
Well, the solution is that, one, the export should cease. That's the first, and so that the little that is in the system, we can manage it till the next harvesting season, which is in November. And two, the government should also look at, in times of crisis, instead of bringing in finished products, if you allow for some raw products to be brought in, so that we keep the employment that we've already given to the citizenry of this country, than just bringing in a finished product, which means that we are also going to take some people out of employment. That is one thing I think we should do. And going forward, the financial institutions may have to come in and do a proper aggregation of the raw material, so that we could be supported in terms of raw material throughout the year. As for the capacity to process, we have enough, and we should be able to process at least 50 to 60% of the nation's requirement.
Right.
Then the rest, we can import it.
So the first thing you said was the export must cease. But just this month, early this month, the Minister of Food and Agriculture indicated that government has restricted the export from the country of maize and soya beans. Are you feeling any impact? Any sort of restoration in that regard?
No.
So this restriction has not worked?
Well, I have not seen it. And I believe that most of my colleagues who are in this industry have also not seen it. If it is going to happen maybe coming weeks or months, for now we've not seen it.
Okay, right. Yeah. Mr. Gakpe, I think you are just about answering the question in terms of what are you willing to do to resolve this?
Yes, please. I said that these issues have come to the attention of the committee, and that we have met the poultry farmers, we have met various farming associations. So the committee is not taking lightly with these issues. When the parliament resume, and then we are back from recess, we are going to push this again, because our industries are collapsing. The planting for food and agriculture is a failure. Job creation as a part of the mandate of that government flagship program. And now the factories have been established. Raw material is nowhere to be found. And the factories are supposed to process over 90 metric tons. They are now processing less than 20. And then they are now, they are eventually not processing. They are just hanging around, and then all those Ghanaians who are employed are now left in the mercy of the country. Now they have families. How do they feed their families? And then the people who have even invested in the value chain, it's the money they have invested. How would they recoup their investment? And meanwhile, if good policy measures are put in place, we should have bumper harvest of soya beans. Soya beans do very well in the northern part of the country. What is the government initiative to actually increase soya beans production in the northern region to supply the industries in the country? And then soya beans is also very nutritious in terms of health-wise. It actually also helps us. It's a natural oil we get from it, natural product we get from it, and it will our own health improve our nutrition and health of our people. So what are we doing in that direction? So now I can tell you that even under the planting for food and agriculture, the figures being channeled out by the minister is being cooked from his office. I challenge him. Those figures, you see, when you keep on cooking figures, the reality will expose you. And the reality is exposing this minister and the government in terms of planting for food and agriculture.
All right.
That's it.
Mr. Gakpe, we'll leave it here. But even as we put pressure on government, we'll be putting pressure on the committee as well. You're in Parliament to work for the people. What
Yes,
matters
we
to
have the
people.
oversight responsibility over the ministry, and we will make sure we will put our feet down and then make sure the needful is done. And then we are not going to leave any stone unturned. We will push and push until the right thing is done. And take my word, we will not take kindly with this. We are serious committee, and we are not going to. We will provide that oversight responsibility to the ministry.
And we thank you for that assurance. That's Member of Parliament for Keta. He's also on the Parliamentary Select Committee on Agriculture, Mr. Kwame Gakpe. In the studio, Mr. Gideon Abuaji, a soybean processor and an agri-business expert. He's been sharing his personal story with us, as well as some of his colleagues in this industry. Good thing is we have the factories to process and get us the finished product. Sad news is the beans are available, except that they're being exported outside of the country, even though government is subsidizing the production of the products. All right, so new developments on this very subject, of course, we will bring to you. Coming up next, we have a conversation. I will be introducing a book to you, something that we'll all be sharing. But Sarah Noko Anku, the author of this book, is an intellectual property attorney and general private legal practitioner. She will join us with a book. We'll talk about it right after these.
Imagine say water wake up at dawn. You know buff, you know chop. When it vanish for your area for 2 weeks, you not get one drop safe inside your tank.
Hey.
Hajia, our life was in dangerous. Only our neighbor get water with water tank.
Water tank?
Yes, water tank. Mamma mia, that water tank get meter for